Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my garden. Today I wanted to take some time to talk to you about some things that went really well in the 2022 gardening season and some things that didn't go so well, and how we can prepare to have a successful gardening season in the coming year. This past year, there were some things that went really well in the garden and things that didn't go so well. Some of it was in my control, such as planning when to start seeds and so forth, and some things were out of my control, like the weather. We had an extremely dry and hot summer. So how can we best prepare for a great gardening season in the coming year? Take a few moments to assess the current growing season that is now coming to an end for most of us, and to start taking notes in our notebook or in our phone, wherever it is that you decide to take notes, so that you will have that information to refer back to over the winter months when you are planning for your, for 2023. Now, in the past, I used to plan in my notebook. I've had a notebook or a garden journal since 2017. And I used to just take some notes based on, when I wanted to start seeds, what type of seeds I was growing, what kind of plants were on my wish list for the following growing season, and what other grand plans I could come up with, I would jot down in my notebook. But over the last couple of years, I've noticed that it's become increasingly easy to just keep a note in the Notes app on my phone, a running list of things that I observe in the garden, whether it's seeds that germinated well or didn't germinate well, when I started things, if it was too late, if it could benefit from starting earlier, and things of that nature. So I have found that in the past, I used to do this over the winter, and it was a good thing to do over the winter because when I can't physically be out in the garden gardening because it was too cold or there was snow on the ground, it sort of felt like I was still in my garden because I was planning in my notebook, in my journal. But what I found was that if you wait until the winter, you've now gone through the holidays and now you're well into the new year, and it gets increasingly difficult to sort of remember what it was that you wanted to take notes of for your following growing season. Okay, let's get to talking about what did good and what did bad in last year's growing season, starting with seeds. Now, I like to start some seeds and I buy some starts from local nurseries. And when I start seeds, I like to use a method called winter sowing. And I have made some videos on this, which I can link here for you to check out. And the reason I like winter sowing is because it doesn't take up any space in my house with grow lights or on the counter for all of the pots. I also realized over the years that I do not enjoy having fungus gnats in my kitchen when I was growing these seeds inside, because the soil will get moist and inevitably you end up with fungus gnats flying all over the place. Thankfully, my husband still thinks they were fruit flies from the bananas. We'll let him keep believing that. And also, the grow lights stay on, and every time that you have to pot up these seedlings, you're quickly running out of space, and it becomes like a balancing act to move the seedlings around, and it just became something I didn't enjoy. So after 3 or 4 years of indoor seed starting, I decided it wasn't for me, and I decided to go the route of doing winter sowing. And so with winter sowing, it's not without its issues. You have to make sure you have proper drainage. If it's been a dry winter season, you do have to supplement with water if you haven't gotten rain or snow. But in general, it's a really successful method and it's pretty low fuss. But you also have to plan the proper time to start seeds. This year, one of the things that I had considered a fail was that I didn't plan on sowing marigolds. Now, I love to have marigolds in the garden, but when I realized it, all of my winter sowing was done, and I didn't actually realize that had happened until it was time to plant everything out in the beginning of May after our last frost date had passed. So when I realized that, I went and checked on marigolds and found a variety from Baker Creek that was really beautiful. It was called Kilimanjaro White Marigolds. Now, I will caution you that they are not white. At least in my experience, they look like a very light, creamy, buttery kind of yellow. It's possible that they will fade to a shade of white as they age, But because I started the seeds a little bit late, I want to say it was maybe mid to late June. And when they started to get ready to be transplanted, all of my daylilies were in bloom and I didn't have the space for them. So I kept the seedlings in small pots for way too long. They got really leggy and they never really took off until I finally cut back all of the daylily foliage when they were done blooming and planted out the marigold seedlings. So now it is the third week of October and they are just now starting to look really pretty and bloom, and they have tons of buds on them. But unfortunately, because of poor planning on my part, I won't get to see them in their full glory because we are likely to get a frost in the next week or two, which means that they will get taken out. And, I would never have enjoyed the way they would have looked if they had been started earlier. So that is one thing that you certainly have to plan well for. If you do want a seed start, you have to know the specifications for your seed, how long before your last frost date they need to be started so that you can ensure to have a very long growing season with them in your garden. So it wouldn't be fair for me to tell you about a seed fail without telling you about a seed success. And that was growing a new to me annual this year from seed called Atomic Purple Gomphrena. Now I cut these from my front garden bed a couple of days ago so that I could kind of let them dry out and figure out how to collect seeds from this beautiful plant. To say that I love them is an understatement. They are absolutely beautiful and they bloom profusely. And they have been non-stop from the minute I put the seed in the ground until right now in the third week of October. They are still blooming their heads off and looking absolutely beautiful all along my front walkway. All I did was I purchased these seeds. They're the Atomic Purple Gomphrena, and I bought the seeds from Baker Creek online. I ordered them. And pretty much the whole pack germinated. All you had to do was soak the seeds in water overnight, and then the next day you would go out and plant them wherever you want them. So I wanted a really dense border, and I had looked up how to grow them, and apparently they're really grown in cut flower farming, and they grow them really densely. So that's what I did. Except I wasn't going to cut them. I just wanted to see what they would look like, nice and tight and overflowing my walkway. And they came in just like I had hoped, and they look better than I expected. And so what I did was I sowed a seed. After I soaked them overnight, I sowed a seed, or I planted a seed every 6 to 8 inches. And they looked absolutely gorgeous. So this was an absolute success and an annual that I would absolutely grow again. Maybe in a different color, but Gomphrena, really great annual. And one more seed that I wanted to mention was nasturtiums. Now I've grown nasturtiums for a couple of years and they're really easy. They have beautiful foliage. They almost look like lily pads, and I love them. I like them a lot. And so what happened was in the summer, I've noticed through taking notes and observing them that through the summer when it gets really hot, they kind of peter out and some of them die. And only the ones that seem to be in a little bit of shade actually kind of make it through that heat. And once the weather starts cooling off, they really pick up again. I have a couple on my front porch that are they're a variegated, I believe they're called Alaskan salmon. And if I said that wrong, I'll flash it up on the screen. And they also came from Baker Creek, and it's a beautiful shade of like an apricot salmon orange. And I planted them in my front planters. And let me tell you, they look absolutely beautiful as an annual for fall, for cool weather. So marigolds is another one. So if you want to make the best use of your plants, plant things or, buy seeds for annuals that will take you from spring through fall, because that way you get the most bang for your efforts. And so those two right there are a great annual that can be super duper into fall. The marigolds with proper planning and, timing, as well as nasturtiums, because the nasturtiums are absolutely taking off right now in this cool fall weather. Something that was out of my control with the garden this year was the weather. Here in the Northeast, we usually have some warm days in the summer, but we also get some rain showers, and this year was an exceptionally dry and super hot summer. So that made growing conditions really difficult. And while in general, most summers I experience gardening fatigue by about mid-August, this year, I was pretty much done with the garden by the end of July, so a couple of weeks sooner than usual. And the reason for that was because it was super hot out and everything dried out so much. It was also really windy. So between the hot temperatures, the lack of rain, and the wind we were getting, I was constantly dragging around the hose. And while I have a pretty lightweight hose and we do have some irrigation, the thing that people don't tell you when you initially set up your irrigation is that if you become a gardener and you're continually moving things around and growing plants where they're getting large, they will eventually start blocking your sprinkler heads, and you eventually start, having heads that are crashing into plants and not watering anything else. And so for that reason, I ended up turning off a lot of my irrigation. I was getting black spot on roses from the petals constantly getting, the leaves constantly getting wet. And so I pretty much resorted to hand watering a lot of the time. And hand watering gets exhausting. So I was sick of filling up watering cans. I think I have 4 watering cans in the garden now. I can only carry 2 at a time, so 1 in each hand. So I would have to constantly be walking back and forth with watering cans or dragging the hose around. I will tell you, after spending an hour to an hour and a half every night of the summer outside in the garden watering, it gets old fast and exhausting. So a consideration that I will make going forward will be to absolutely make buying drought-tolerant plants a priority for my garden. With climate change, everything's changing. The weather is changing. It's evident. And so if last summer was any indication of what's to follow, I certainly have to start planning ahead, because I do not want to have more summers of dragging the hose around in my future. So that is something that I took note of and that I will be sure to follow up on in the future. And the third observation that I made in my garden this year was that while I have a lot of spring color with, I planted some tulips that I had found last December for 75% off, so my front border looked beautiful. And then I have a large collection of iris at this point, and those always put on such a great show. I had some beautiful lupin that I started from seed using the winter sowing method. So the spring garden was really spectacular. And I also have a lot of perennials that I've collected over the years. And so right through July, the garden is abuzz with beautiful pollinators and just a true riot of color. However, I noticed that once my coneflowers started fading and it was time to sort of deadhead and cut back everything from its first big flush, there was some lulls in the garden. And so my plan is to next year try to fill those voids with perennials or shrubs that can kind of pick up where those summer perennials left off, and maybe continue to add some perennials and shrubs for more fall color. I have some beautiful ornamental grasses like the hamlin that offer beautiful interest in the late summer and early fall garden, as well as sedums and even some beautiful shrubs. Some of my favorites I've made a video about, and I can link it here, some shrubs for fall interest. I have the 9-bark that's also beautiful and has that dark foliage. The candy corn spirea, which is a fabulous spirea. It is dwarf and has such a beautiful array of colors. And it's called candy corn, so of course it would be beautiful in the fall. They call it that because of the colors on it. They have they start off beautiful red, and then they get to be some orange, and then they turn a chartreuse. So it just goes through a large array of color change. And an absolutely gorgeous shrub that is chock full of purple berries for me this year that is excellent for the fall is the Proven Winners Glamberry Beauty Bush. That one is absolutely stunning right now in the 3rd week of October. It has this gorgeous dark foliage. Then it starts in the summer at some point, it gets these little blooms that are pink and white. They're very small. And then the blooms fall off, followed by these gorgeous berries in fall. But in addition to that, I would like to add some more plants that give me some fall interest. And so that is a space in the garden that I found I had a gap or a lull in color and interest, and somewhere that I plan on focusing on in the next growing season. When it comes to planning your garden, having notes to refer back to is invaluable. They give you a reference point, and whether you take notes in a good old-fashioned notebook or you take notes in your phone, both will work. And in fact, to be honest, in the last couple of years, as much as I like writing in my journal or my notebook, I've really started to enjoy taking notes in my cell phone because it is very accessible. So, if you just take notes in your notes app, I usually start a new page for every garden season. I started back in 2020, 2021, 2022, and I have already started a notes page for 2023 in my phone. I find it really easy, and if you're out, at a garden center and you want to refer to your wish list of plants, if you want to just jot down the name of a plant that you see when you're out and about. So it's really useful. So whether you do it in a notebook or in the notes app on your phone, just take notes and do it before too much time passes and you forget what it is that you wanted to take note of. So I hope that this video has given you some ideas and, help you planning for your garden for next year. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.